Hi, my name's Ellie Benson, and I did my big board presentation on the effects of past countercultures of the past 5 decades and how they affect the future mainstream. So, how did I think of my topic? Well, when I first started to think of my big word topic, I decided to focus on pop culture, something that I have always found very interesting, especially fashion. I plan to do some with fashion when I'm older, and it's something that I've always found a passion for. I noticed that my mom's trends that she had been wearing, some of them were very similar to what I was wearing, trends that she wore as a kid. But I also noticed that some of the trends that I wear today no one would ever dare to wear back when she was a kid. So I started looking into this. As I first started conducting my research, I started to look up what clothing trends had come and gone back through history, what was recent on the runway, and what were past runway trends. This led me to different music trends that went along with these fashion trends, such as different genres of music, different artists, etc., etc. Then I came to music festivals and how they followed a similar pattern to music and fashion. They all followed the same pattern by starting with youth movements and how they were once unpopular, then over time evolved and became a popular trend. So before I start really getting into my paper, I think it's important to define 3 crucial terms in order to understand everything that we're about to delve into. First is counterculture. This is a group of people within a culture that separate themselves from the larger group due to things such as different views, beliefs, values, etc. Next is mainstream. This is ideas, attitudes, or activities of a group that are seen as normal or popular in a big group. And lastly, we have pop culture. This is ideals of humor, love, charisma, basically just different beliefs different views that fall into music, fashion, just any kind of art. So, all of my research led me to one final thing. Countercultures of the past 5 decades have continuously evolved into mainstream trends in fashion and music through the commercialization of counterculture trends. First, this can be seen with music. Music begins as part of the counterculture in one generation, then within the next few decades becomes a part of the mainstream pop hits. This can first be seen with rock and roll. This was started in the United States and the UK with artists that were a part of a rebellious genre, and they were embraced by the youth. As time went on, this youth movement grew older and became more popular by the masses. This form of music kept being embraced and eventually became very popular. This can also be seen with artists such as Bob Dylan in the genre of rap. This is significant because it demonstrates how quickly voices of resistance become commercialized and sold to the mainstream. Businesses discover that they can profit from this music, and they sell it to the masses. Some say that commercialization isn't really bad though, because it's what the consumer wants. But what the consumer wants, they don't really know the meaning behind it. Having the meaning shows what started this movement, and it's a big part of history. It's important to show the significance of the counterculture because it expresses the critiques of mainstream culture that's necessary for growth. Next, we have music festivals. These are always growing and continuously growing today. They're predicted to become even bigger in America than sporting events. But over time, changes of who goes to them, why people go to them, and what happens has occurred. It's now popular among the masses. One of the first music festivals was Woodstock, as I'm sure many of you have heard of. This was in August of 1969, And it was a huge festival to celebrate the beliefs beliefs of the counterculture and try to distance themselves from the mainstream of society. After this, music festivals disappeared for a while in the night and then came back again in the 90s with Austin City Limits, Lollapalooza, Bonnaroo, Coachella, many others I'm sure you've all heard of. As they re-emerged, they became a money-making business. They are made for the mainstream to come socialize while listening to their favorite songs that they can hear on the radio live. Some say the reason never really changed, though, for why people were going to these music festivals. They still wanted to go and listen to music with their friends. Although this isn't necessarily true, because before they were celebrating the rejection of society, while today it's the mainstream of society coming together. Today, corporations are making huge amounts of profits from these. The festivals themselves continue to thrive, and the commercialization of these festivals has transformed the counterculture movement into something that can be profitable among the mainstream. Lastly, we have fashion. Fashion changes from generation to generation, and the major trends of the past 5 decades have almost all been repeated. But this isn't really surprising to any of you because you're the ones wearing these trends, and the odds that some of you are wearing them today is very probable. The fashion industry has found that it's easy to use older edgy trends, and reintroduce them to the public as something that can be enjoyed by the masses. Commercialization drowns out the meaning of these trends, though. For example, the army jacket, an ironic piece worn by the counterculture in the 1960s to represent peace and a symbol against war. But now it's a staple piece that's in all of your closets, I can assume. This can also be seen with grunge, Doc Martens, combat boots, etc. Designers go straight towards celebrities to start these trends, though, because celebrities are always the ones who are seen with the new trends, and we like to follow in celebrities' footsteps. Sarah Mower from Vogue magazine states that there's an algorithm to predict these next trends. All you have to do is take today's date, 2016, and subtract 25, the average age of these rising designers. Using this is the best way possible to utilize the past. It allows the designer to take a trend that was not very popular when they were a kid, but something they always kind of found interesting, and produce it to the masses as they become older. So what's next? We can predict future mainstream and countercultures with all of this information we've just acquired. The future is bound to have countercultures such as greed busters, people who are angered and disassociated from the financial industry, those who only want to live through voluntary work, and those who are obsessed with technology. These provide insight for what lies ahead. It's important to be able to predict so we can help learn from our past and make for a better future. So what's next? How has countercultures of the past 5 decades moved into the future mainstreams? Well, through commercialization. All trends resurface as popular trends. People who start these counterculture movements are almost always kids. Youth predict the future unknowingly. But this isn't a bad thing. They're the original source of our mainstream trends. They're not necessarily responsible for a backwards momentum, but rather it's the people reintroducing them who are. Rock and roll music fought against segregation, hippies fought against war materialism, and the grunge movement challenged the ideals of conformity. The issue is that when meaning behind these counterculture trends is drowned out in order to make them more appealing to the masses, our society loses its ability to critique itself and learn from the messages that these counterculture movements are trying to get across. But now that we know the roots and know what problems have started from these from these mainstream trends, we can learn and watch younger generations start future mainstream trends and learn from them, ensuring that we're living in a forward-moving society. So, this all impact me? Well, first, to say the least, I was shocked. I couldn't believe America was letting such key aspects of our history fade into commercialization. I learned we must be aware. We have to learn and stay informed as to what past trends are and what's going to become of them. We have to teach the side of history not being taught. We have to inform people on the counterculture and the history that it represents. Teach people the dangers of commercialization and what it's doing to our society. So now, what did this really lead me to? My community outreach, I really wanted to find a way to incorporate the trend of giving while also incorporating the ideas of learning from our counterculture. The best way to do this, I thought, was to create a clothing drive. Trends are always going in and out of style, as we can clearly see, but 15% of Americans are living in poverty and can't even afford clothing, much less clothing that's hitting the mainstream trends. So I decided to team up with the Baldwin Center. This is a community service organization in Pontiac, Michigan, whose mission is to help provide a better lifestyle for men, women, and children in the Pontiac community. The clothes that I collected would all go to kids and adults of all different ages living in the Pontiac community. So when I started my drive, I wanted to set it up at places that really connected to me. So I put boxes at Seaholm, Adat Shalom Synagogue, and Corton Elementary School, which is the elementary school I attended. The goal of my drive was to not only provide people that couldn't afford clothing to those who couldn't get it on their own, but to teach people about donating and defeating the label. Show them that these people don't care about where their clothes are from, but they're merely lucky to have them. This is the poster I set up and placed around the school, as well as Adat Shalom and Corton and other places in our community. So now the project in motion. Once my project started, I kind of had to let it run its course, and there wasn't much I could do besides encourage people and just inform people on what was going on. But then I was asked to speak at Corton. My 5th grade teacher asked me to speak to his now current 5th grade class and teach them the importance of giving back, what my project was, and why I was doing this clothing drive. So when I got there, I introduced myself as well as my project, and I discussed the importance of counterculture to them. I told them what they could do to help and how important their help was for my project, because without them it really would have been nothing. Lastly, I told them the importance of doing community service and what it has done for me and why I enjoy doing this. Now, this wasn't initially a part of my plan, but I can honestly say that it was one of my most proud moments throughout my entire community outreach. I got to help teach them about defeating the label, as well as learning from our history and not only looking at one side of history, making sure that we learn the counterculture side of history and the mainstream side of history. Next was the pickup. When I picked it from Seaholm and Adat Shalom, I was very excited because the boxes I had placed there were full, and I felt like my project was a success. But then I went to Corton, and I was very overwhelmed. While not only the one box that I had given them was overflowing, but 3 other huge carts of boxes from the whole school had donated were full, and I couldn't even fit them all in my car, but I had to have someone else come help me put them all in my car. It was really overwhelming, and when I got there, the kids not only were so happy that they had done this project and helped me with it, but they kept telling me about all the different trends and how now in their classes they were learning about the 2 sides of history, and they just, even over the 2 weeks, they hadn't forgotten anything that I had said to them, and I found that really exciting, and I could really see my impact on the community. So here are the kids at Corton packaging the clothes. Here are all the clothes in my garage. So in conclusion, when I went to the Baldwin Center, the people were so thrilled for what I had done. I not only got to see the excitement of myself and the kids at Corton, but the people who work at the Baldwin Center and the people who are going to be collecting my clothes. I never got a really hands-on experience like this before, and it was definitely very eye-opening, and I'm so happy I got to do this for my community outreach project. Overall, it was just an amazing experience, and I learned the change perspective of trends. I learned that history is crucial for the start of our future, and youth movements are the ones who are starting these trends. It's important to notice them and notice their trends and what they're trying to say. Commercialization destroys the meaning of these trends. The clothing drive was a step to stop this. It was to show people that getting these clothes, they don't care about the label and they are merely thankful for them. It was to defeat what the mainstream is trying to do, of drown out meaning and only gain profit from these trends. It was to learn what is represented by these clothing trends, and to not let a label define a piece of clothing or a time. Overall, I think that we should learn from these trends and never let the label of a mainstream trend run your wallet. Thank you.